Well, Cristina Escobar has been shaking her head for most of that answer, so I'm going to give you a chance to respond. Let's focus on the political transition first. Clones of the Castros, is that what's happening with this transition? And then you can pick up on Dan's point about the alleged slight to Obama when he came to the airport.
Well, definitely we're waiting for a moment, which will be in February 2018, when the president, Raul Castro, has said several times that he's stepping out as the head of the government, and we already having the process of elections here in Cuba towards that moment. But of course, this is a very interesting show because I can listen to a lot of different perspectives. I just wanted to make a comment on something very specific. What Trump said today, it's a demonstration of not understanding the Cuban economic system and social system. When you say that you're giving Airbnbs and imposing that American visitors go and spend their monies in private workers, that's fine, and we do have a lot of private workers and a lot of private business. But when you have this kind of policy, you create a dissuasive effect on the people that wants to visit Cuba, and that affects the state-run enterprises and also the private workers, which, by the way, leave much more out of the American visitors and less than Europeans and Canadian visitors, which goes more to the hotels. And in second term, this idea of the military that goes to the military looks like everything goes to the army. And the military-related enterprises, as a matter of fact, they work as any other public enterprise in Cuba. They have specifics in the internal order. They're probably one of the most efficient holdings in Cuba. They employ thousands of people, civil people, population, and they work right, and they work under the same regulation as any other enterprise. So trying to frame this idea is actually very naive and shows not understanding the Cuban system. And then I really believe that we need to strain for the Cuban audience something very important, believing that not closing the doors to the state-run business is actually helping the Cuban people. The electricity that we have, the safety on our streets, the education, healthcare, all of that is provided by the state. So it has to be a balance. You need to deal with both.
That's an interesting point because it is a very different system. But, you know, it's not just Donald Trump. Sometimes you can see it's a Donald Trump policy and then his Secretary of State says something else. But let's listen to Rex Tillerson because he has exactly the same point of view as his boss on this one.
If we're going to sustain the sunny side of this relationship, Cuba must, absolutely must, begin to address its human rights challenges. Now, within that sunny side of the relationship, there are troubling elements to us that bring the relationship into conflict with existing statute obligations. And that is that as we're developing these business relationships and as we're enjoying the benefits on the economic and development side, are we inadvertently or directly providing financial support to the regime? Our view is we are.
Ariane, you know, it's really interesting because this policy is really basically the same from Donald Trump and Rex Tillerson and others. But they've just come back from Saudi Arabia, as I mentioned before. They didn't question that when they were selling arms. Cynics have said that this is not about human rights. It's about delivering to the people in Miami who won in Florida. Is that what you think?
Yeah, it's obvious that this kind of policy has been pushed for many years for a specific group based in Miami. It's actually the one who really support them to win all type of elections. So, and there is a group that they don't want U.S. lift embargo because this is the way they make a living. So, if they don't have embargo,
but they also lost property in the revolution.
Well, most of them, they don't even lost anything. Most of them, they just came, or they have nothing before, you know? So I don't think this is the own personal interest of this particular group in Miami that is, you know, want to keep making living about the Cuban embargo.
Dan, do you want to respond to that in time?
I've been waiting to ask a question. I want to ask the lady reporter from Cuba. She said, if I heard her correctly, that there is already pre-election activities going on. What I would like to know is the principal candidates who could run for election and win the country, are they continuation of the Castro regime or are they something different?
Cristina, go ahead.
Well, I believe that's up to the Cuban people in the first place. And definitely, I do believe that taking into consideration that Raul is going to remain as the first secretary of the Communist Party, probably is going to be a future president that is going to coincide politically and ideologically speaking with the current president and first secretary of the party. Because remember, now Raul has the two positions, and from February 2018 and go on, is going to be separated. So we'll be choosing in February 2018 will be the president, the head of the state, and Raul will remain as the first secretary of the party. So I believe there's going to be a continuity in the ideology and in the paths, in this sense, all in the economy and in policies.
Dan, do you want to respond to that?
So I'm not sure I got an answer to that question. Let me be more specific. Is the leading candidates in Cuba going to be look more and govern more like the Castros, or somebody different, going a different direction?
Oh, it's going to be somebody different. By definition, it won't be someone of the family, of the Castro family, by definition. There's no one in that family that is actually posting out or looking out like a possibility as a candidate. Definitely no. It's going to be someone differently. Okay. It's going to be someone younger, of course, than the generation currently in power.
Dan, Christina, I just want to go to James here, and let's try and open up the discussion, because, you know, a lot of people see the Castros as sort of one block, but actually Raul's Castro's policies after Fidel have been very different.
Have been very different.
And so perhaps let's just talk about that and where you think Cuba is actually going. Because sometimes it's difficult for outsiders. They look at a monolith, don't they? But things have been, there's been a big debate within the country and lots of transitions.
Well, we here in the U.S. need to be careful about being arrogant and not going and reading stuff. Raul Castro is not stepping down. There is a law that says you cannot be in executive power for more than 8 years. That is a law that was propagated by Raul Castro, put before the National Assembly, adopted by the National Assembly. There is a discussion going on in the Cuban Communist Party and in Cuban society of bringing the elections more directly to the people. It's not about multi-party elections. Cubans are involved in debates within the Communist Party, within the state, within the citizenry, about all kinds of issues, more so than we are involved here in the United States. The second point here is that we are not the only visitors to Cuba. There is a whole world out there of Brazilians and Colombians and Venezuelans, Spanish and French. And every week you see leaders from Europe, from Western Europe, from India, from Pakistan, foreign ministers, China, economic ministers, going in and outside of Cuba. I spent 2 hours with Vice President Canals back in January. He's 54, 55, 56 years old, a young adult. I'm 70. A very well-educated man, former head of education. This is a new generation, as the young adult journalist has pointed out. Now, they will follow their socialist path, but there's also a lot of self-criticism inside Cuba about a revolution within the revolution, which embraces the principles of the 1859 revolution and the achievements of that revolution in health and culture and education and so forth. But at the same time, it criticizes over-centralism. These are discussions within the...
I'm glad you mentioned that, James, because the economic angle, let's go to you, Ariane. In terms of today's announcement, what really struck me is you had American Airlines, the cruise companies, the US Chamber of Commerce, all criticizing this rollback. It's not just about hotels and tourism, is it, and cigars. Right. There are elements of the Cuban economy which are unique. I'm thinking about biochemistry, medicine, areas where big pharmaceuticals really want to look in there because they've done things so differently. Is that what U.S. is missing out on here?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there is a lot of things that Cuba can bring, you know, or exchange to U.S. And if you're cutting that kind of supply, you are actually limiting yourself, or, you know, getting more resource, more like exchange of knowledge from other people. So I think it's not just about hotels that go to military or the money that go directly to the military. So I think it's a little bit more about that.
Dan, I'm going to give you the last word because I know you're the sole Trump supporter here, and I want to give you a fair say. We don't want to feel like you're ganging up on you. You've got about a minute left. What do you think on terms of the economic thing? Because this was rejected by a lot of, not just the American people who are for it, but also by big business, which is rare to have them on the same side.
The thing that concerns me is why is the legal immigration out of Cuba up 31% in 2016 versus 2015? If it's such a wonderful place to be, why are more and more Cubans wanting to come to the United States?
Same reason that
Well, I have a question for him.
Yeah.
Quickly, yeah, we've got to wrap.
Have you ever been in Cuba?
No.
No.
So how can you say,
Oh, that's good.
if you've never been
That's a
there,
very good
you don't know
question,
what
by
is
the way.
the kind of lifestyle in Cuba? So
Because I have friends that have immigrated in from Cuba.
But I cannot talk for my friends. I had to talk for the things that I live, I experienced. I came from Cuba like 6 years ago, and I know what kind of style of life we have in Cuba. And the only issue we have is the economy part, that everybody wants a little bit more, but we're all happy there.
Dan,
So why did you come here?
Dan, can I just suggest something? Before these restrictions go in place, go to Cuba, because it really is interesting. And it's not the monolith, like the US is not the monolith that people expect with the Donald Trump presidency. They'll be surprised. Dan, thanks so much in Tampa. Christina, always great to see you in Havana. Ariane, James, I wish we could go on longer. We'll be back talking about Cuba. That's it for this edition of The Heat, but the conversation continues online. Join us on CGTN America's Facebook page to comment on this or any other show, or chat with us on Twitter at CGTN_America. I'm Nathan King in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us.